Industrial hygiene refers to the science and practice of identifying, evaluating, and controlling workplace conditions that may cause illness, injury, or discomfort to workers. In simple terms, it focuses on protecting workers from different types of hazards. These hazards include physical hazards like noise, chemical hazards such as dust or fumes, biological hazards like bacteria, and even psychosocial hazards such as stress at work. Because of this risk, law and regulation are very important. They help to protect workers' health and safety by setting clear standards, defining responsibilities for employee and employees, and ensuring proper enforcement. In Malaysia, the Occupational Safety and Health Act or OSHA 1994 is the main law for workplace safety. However, there are also other important laws that support and strengthen this act. The objective of this presentation is to raise awareness about several case laws that complement OSHA 1994 and help to improve Malaysia's overall industrial hygiene and workplace safety system. Next, let's explore five important law and guidelines related to industrial hygiene in Malaysia. The first one is Occupational Health Guideline. The second one is Pesticide Act 1974. The third one is Poison Act 1952. The fourth one is Atomic Energy Licensing Act 1984. The last one is Environmental Quality Act 1974. This guideline help protect the community by guiding employees to identify and control biological hazards in the workplace. They are also help reduce mosquito-borne disease and manage psychosocial risks such as work stress, violence, and substance abuse. By following these guidelines, workplace can prevent the spread of infection, reduce accidents caused by stress or impaired workers, and create a healthier, safer, and more supportive working environment for employees. However, there are some weaknesses in this guideline. One major weakness is that they are not legally enforceable. This means employees are not required by law to follow them. As a result, the level of implementation may differ between industries. Some workers may ignore the guideline due to lack of awareness, limited resource, or low commitment occupational health, which reduce their overall effectiveness. So let's move to some case examples. The first one is dengue prevention and mosquito control activities carried out at construction site. The second one is stress management and mental health workshop conducted in office environments. The third one is drug and alcohol screening programs implemented in manufacturing industries. The fourth one is workplace violence prevention, training for employees in customer-facing sector such as retail and healthcare. The last one is biological hazard control procedures used in laboratories and healthcare facilities.
Next, let's move on to the next important Malaysian laws related to industrial hygiene, which are the Pesticide Act 1974 and the Poison Act 1952, and their importance in industrial hygiene. The Pesticide Act 1974 regulates the importation, manufacture, sale, and use of pesticide in Malaysia. This act is especially relevant to sectors such as agriculture, plantation, and pest control services. And the main purpose of this act is to control the use of pesticides, prevent health and the environmental hazard, and lastly is to protect workers as well as the public from harmful chemical exposure. From an industrial hygiene perspective, pesticides are considered chemical hazards. Workers may be exposed through inhalation, skin contact, or accidental ingestion. This act helps control exposure by promoting safe handling practices and the use of personal protective equipment. Under the Pesticides Act 1974, all pesticides must be registered with Pesticides Board Malaysia before they can be sold or used. The Act also requires proper labelling with safety warnings and instruction. In addition, only trained or licensed persons are allowed to handle certain pesticides, and pesticides must be stored and disposed of safely. Next is the Poison Act 1952. The function of the Poison Act 1952 is to control the sale, possession and use of poisonous substances in Malaysia. These substances are commonly used in industry, laboratories and healthcare facilities. The purpose of the Poison Act 1952 is to regulate toxic substances, prevent misuse and accidental poisoning, and also ensure the safety of workers and the public. Further importance to industrial hygiene, this act plays an important role in industrial hygiene by preventing chemical accidents, ensuring safe handling practices, and reducing long-term health effects caused by toxic exposure. For example, in a laboratory, chemical must be stored in labeled container, kept in appropriate cabinets, and handled only by trained personnel. Under the Poison Act 1952, poisonous substances are classified according to their level of toxicity, such as Group A, Group B, and Group C. This classification is important because it determines how dangerous the substance is and who is allowed to handle or sell it. Highly toxic poisons are strictly controlled and can only be handled by authorized and trained persons, while less toxic substances still require proper supervision and safe handling procedures. In terms of workplace safety, the Poison Act 1952 plays a crucial role in preventing chemical accidents and poisonings. By requiring proper labeling, safe storage, and authorized handling, this act helps reduce the risk of spill, misuse, and accidental exposure. These measures protect workers from both short-term effect and long-term effect, such as irritation and poisoning, including organ damage. Overall, the Act promotes a safer and more controlled working environment. Okay, now let's look at the key provisions of Poison Act. Under this Act, poisons are classified according to their levels of toxicity, and only authorized persons are allowed to sell or handle certain poisons. The Act also requires clear labeling, proper record keeping, and safe storage of poisonous substances.
Hi, my name is Tengku Nur Christina, and today I will explain to you the Atomic Energy Licensing Act 1984. Firstly, its significance in regulating radiation safety would be comprehensive licensing and control to prevent unauthorized or unsafe handling and ensure only competent, approved operators are involved. By requires licensing for those operators. Next is establishment of a dedicated regulator that is created, the Atomic Energy Licensing Board, which is known as AELB, as the National Authority to Regulate Radiation Practice. Thirdly, protection of workers, public and environment, and this act mandates radiation protection measures such as dose limits, monitoring safety procedures, and emergency preparedness. Lastly would be legal enforcement and accountability, which provides penalties, fines, and imprisonment for non-compliance. Now, we will move on to impact on industry using atomic energy or radioactive materials. Firstly, medical sector could ensure the safe use of medical technology like X-ray machines, CT scanners, and radiotherapy equipment. For industrial application, it promotes safer work practice in industry such as manufacturing, construction, and oil and gas. For research and education, it encourages responsible scientific research while preventing the misuse of loss of radioactive materials. Lastly, waste management and environmental protection, which aims to reduce environmental contamination and long-term public health risks. Now, I will talk about the Environmental Quality Act 1974. The role of the Environmental Quality Act 1974 in controlling environmental pollution would be regulation of pollution sources. This act controls pollution from industrial emission, effluents, scheduled waste, noise, and hazardous substances, and industries must comply with prescribed limits for air, water, and land pollution before discharging pollution into the environment. Next is licensing and approval mechanism, which means it is required to have licenses, permits, and approval for polluting activities to ensure that pollution control technologies and best practice are in place before operation begins. Third one will be scheduled waste management. It provides a legal framework for handling, storage, transport, treatment, and disposal of scheduled waste to prevent uncontrolled exposure to toxic chemicals that could harm both public and workers. For monitoring, enforcement, and penalties, this means that empowers the Department of Environment, which is DOE, to conduct inspections, monitoring, and enforcement, to impose fines, shutdown, or legal action against non-compliance industries. Lastly, Environmental Impact Assessment, or EIA. EIA requires for prescribed activities ensuring environmental and health risks are identified and mitigated early. Now, I'm going to talk about Environmental Quality Act 1974 and its relationship. Firstly, its relationship to industrial hygiene practices would be control of chemical exposure. That means limits on air emission and effluents, reduce worker exposure to toxic substances such as solvents, heavy metal, and acidic fumes, to encourage engineering control like ventilation system and scrubbers, key element of industrial hygiene. Next is hazardous waste handling. That means proper waste segregation and disposal to reduce risk of spills, inhalation, and skin contact among workers. This supports safe work procedures and training for handling hazardous material. Lastly, noise and physical hazard, which means noise regulation under the Act help control excessive industrial noise, protecting workers from hearing loss, and align with workplace noise monitoring and control programs. For the impact on workers' safety, firstly, health risk reduction. By minimizing environmental contamination, the Act indirectly lowers occupational exposure to harmful pollutions. This prevents occupational disease such as respiratory disorders, chemical poisoning, and long-term chronic illness. Next, promotion of safe industrial design. These industries are encouraged to adopt cleaner production technologies, safer chemical substitutes, and pollution control equipment. These measures enhance both environmental protection and worker safety. Last but not least, complementary role with OSHA 1994. The EQA 1974 complements the Occupational Safety Health Act 1994, where EQA focused on environmental release and OSHA focuses on workplace exposure. Together, they form a comprehensive framework for protecting workers, the public, and the environment.
In conclusion, all the Malaysian safety laws discussed play an important role in supporting industrial hygiene practices in the workplace. These laws help control chemicals and other workplace hazards by setting clear rules on how hazardous substances should be handled, stored and used safely. By enforcing these requirements, the Act helps reduce workers' exposure to harmful chemicals and dangerous conditions, which can otherwise lead to occupational diseases, poisoning, or long-term health effects. In addition, these laws emphasize the importance of safe work practices, proper training, and the use of personal protective equipment to protect workers' health. Overall, compliance with these acts helps create a safer, healthier, and more controlled working environment for all workers.